Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Watson Michael from Ceylon Institute of English and Leadership. And once again, we are honored to have Dr. Gary DePaul back with us, right? So let me give you an introduction about Dr. Gary DePaul again. So he's the Executive Leadership Development Consultant at Gary DePaul Leadership. Also, he's a distinguished Principal Research Fellow at the Conference Board, and he's the adjunct professor for the Department of Educational Leadership at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So Gary, welcome back. Glad to have you.
Thank you for having me again. I'm flattered and I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to have you, Gary, back with us. So these days we notice a lot of things going on, especially in the workforce. So based on your experience, Gary, we wanted to know, like, how do you deal with criticism?
Okay, so criticism, when you think of criticism, it's usually something negative, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that that people see as a judgment against you, so they're criticizing something about you. So here's the thing. So I'll let me break it down a little bit and then give some practical advice. Criticism, it falls in the ballpark or the area of conflict.
Yeah.
And conflict is very uncomfortable. And
Yes.
if someone has criticism, it's not within your comfort zone. It's something outside your comfort zone, and
100%.
yeah. So it's saying it's something negative, but we can do something with this. If you take criticism, and think of it as an opportunity, then things can change rather dramatically in how you view criticism.
Yeah.
When someone comes to you and they criticize you, say like if someone said, Watson, you're egotistical. You know, what you do with something like that? Well, first, egotistical, it's a label.
Yes.
And here's how you could take it.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to react to being called an egotist, or saying I'm egotistical, I need to inquire. I need to find out I need to identify the behaviors. And if I identify the behaviors, I could do something about the behaviors.
Yes.
So someone might say you're egotistical. Well, what do you mean? Can you give me an example? Well, you don't listen.
Yeah.
Okay, well, still, that's not giving you enough information. You have to dig in deeper.
Yes.
Well, when you say I don't listen, what's a situation? Well, I give you a task and you go do it, but as you're doing it, I tell you I want it done in a particular way, and you just don't listen.
Yes.
So that is a lot different from being told you're egotistical to when you're doing a task, you don't listen to what I'm saying. Okay, that I could do something about.
Yes.
There's just when you're being criticized, you have to look at how you're developing. You have this comfort zone, this familiarity zone, and learning occurs outside of it. Real learning does. And this having someone criticize you, you could turn it into a positive, make it an opportunity, and really dig into what the person is trying to get at, and make it very behavioral. When they throw labels at you, and you can't do much with the label, you're introverted.
Yeah.
Well, give me an example of why that's not a good thing. Well, in this situation, you behave this particular way. And then that gets you thinking, well, I can change that behavior, or you can keep asking questions. Why is that bad? Why is that something that doesn't benefit me? And
Mm,
just keep digging at what it is what's driving the critique.
yeah,
And so the way you deal with it is you try to understand it and think of it as an opportunity and
absolutely.
welcome it.
100%. So I agree, because it is an opportunity for you to learn something. If I was not criticized in my early days, I would have not been where I am today. But I'm still open to criticism, because even Gary, you as well, you have mentioned in your book, right? What the heck is leadership? You're open
Yeah.
for suggestions. If it's wrong, or if you didn't like the book, just write to me, right? So
Yeah.
like that, including both of us, we are always open to criticism, because we are not perfect people, so we are still learning things. Because once there was a wise man who said, the best anti-aging medicine is lifelong learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Completely agree with that.
so
The other thing about criticism is people don't want to criticize. They want to be what I call being nice.
yeah,
So if you're doing something, I don't want to hurt your feelings, so I'm going to
yeah,
be nice. But being kind is when you're able to say, Watson, I want you to be aware of something that's bothering me, and here it is. That's kindness. That is something that helps you, and vice versa. If you saw something in my book that you thought was like a misspelled word, or I make a point that is invalid,
yeah,
if you brought that up to me, that's being kind. Not bringing up to me, bringing it up and just saying, "Hey, it's a great book. Nothing, I love everything about it." Is being nice
correct.
and trying to help me feel good, but it doesn't help me grow and develop and learn, like you were just saying.
Absolutely, 100% agree with you. So, Gary, like we most of us face like good things, we face bad things as well, right? So would you like to
Yeah,
tell about one of the worst things that happened to you, and how did you deal with it?
yeah. Where do I begin? There's a lot of those.
Same here,
Um,
same here. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll share one that's really unusual.
Okay.
That I was part of a workforce reduction. I was looking for work,
Mm-hmm.
and someone Roger Addison, who's a performance consultant, recommended that I go work for this company, and said, you need to interview Gary. They brought me in, I did interviews, and the VP came up to me
Okay.
and started asking me some questions about, have I ever fired anyone? And I said, yeah. But I mean, it was really hard to do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's hard, but have you done it? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to fire someone before.
Mm.
He said, that's all I want to know. And he left. Well, it turns out he hired me because he wanted me to fire two people.
I think it was there in What the Heck is Leadership, right?
Yeah, it's in the book. I shared the story in the book.
Yeah.
And I end up being a manager of two people, and he wants me to fire both people.
Ah, that's
And and when I showed up with work to work for the first time, I go through orientation, then he drops that bombshell on me, just as, by the way, I want you to fire these two. Why? So think of the criticism thing. Well, what is it that they're doing? Back to our first questions. Well, they talk to other employees and disrupt, but not about work.
Mm-hmm.
They're disruptive.
Yeah.
I'll walk by their desk and they're on their computer balancing their checkbook,
Yeah.
or are doing something, they're lazy. And so I took all this information in, and the way I dealt with it is I did inquiry
Yeah.
and tried to figure out, well, why is it that they're doing this? Well,
Mm.
it turns out they didn't have enough work. They
Wow.
were bored. And
Yeah.
it even gets worse. Check this out. They did a project,
Yeah.
a training project. They developed this training, and it sat there. And they were waiting for approval to implement it and go on to the next project, but they were not allowed to go to another project
Mm-hmm.
until this one was implemented, but no one would approve it. And it was really messed up. And I contacted
Totally.
the director that was supposed to approve it and say, well, why haven't you approved it?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I don't know. Is it okay with you? I said, yeah, it's okay with me. Well, then go ahead and implement it. But what it came down to is I had to explain that these were hardworking people, or they wanted to be. They just didn't have enough work. And long story short, when I was able to give them the work and I pulled projects from other people so that they could work on them, one of them is a manager there today. He was promoted twice and is one of the best managers in that department. The other one ended up retiring after another 5 or 6 years
Uh-huh.
of successfully doing his job.
Wow.
And they were not fired because I took the time to listen and to figure out what the criticism is.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, it's going back to the first one, and what's really going on, and getting at the root problem. And the root problem, they were bored. And that's how I dealt with it. I helped them overcome being bored. And these are people that woke up in the morning and said, and they didn't wake up and said, I want to be destructive at work. I
Yeah.
want to make people miserable. No, they wanted to contribute. They wanted purpose. They were able to deliver when they were given the opportunity.
Mm.
It just takes time to listen and to find out what's going on. So
100.
it went from, you need to fire the two people that report to you,
Yeah.
to one becoming a manager, and one completed his 25-year career at the company
My goodness. So
and
that's
retired.
2.5 decades. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So based on this, Gary, we understand there are so much of courses, degrees about leadership and all, right? But everybody cannot become a leader. What are some important traits you can learn to be a better person? And for those who really want to try to be a leader, what are some traits?
Yeah. Building on leadership. This first part, you're gonna be all over it. And that is learning,
Yeah.
becoming a lifelong learner. And it's almost like, if you have leadership, the other side is learning. And if you want to be good at leadership, you have to continuously want to develop in that area. There's always some way that you can improve. And you have to gather feedback. You have to continue to read and figure out where are areas that you could improve on and how you can help other people. Learning is just huge. Some of the basics of leadership, and 10 years ago, no, 20 years ago, this wasn't true. Developing awareness of psychological safety and we've talked about psychological safety before. That's an area that is really important in making it safe for people to be open and honest, and without fear of retribution or being criticized in a for trying to contribute. Having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, and those, if for people who aren't familiar with those, it's definitely worth learning about it. People with a fixed mindset believe that you have a certain level of intelligence and you can't grow and develop from that. You're stuck at that. People with a growth mindset believe that they can continue to develop.
Hmm.
When you say things like, let me give you an example. Gosh, you've heard of Michael Jordan and
Basketball player.
basketball?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if you say, gosh, he's such a natural talent and he's really, really good at that, but I'll never be like that. I'll never even come close to that. That's getting into the fixed mindset. But if you say that, you know what?
Let me stop you for a
He-
moment, Gary.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, Michael Jordan is fine. Okay. But I'm proud to have you as a guest on this podcast, right? You have authored 4 books. Your knowledge is immense. And for all those who are watching, I'm telling you all can learn by reading Gary's 4 books and gain more knowledge than certain leadership programs. It doesn't matter whether you're in EMEA, NORM, or APAC, right? Those 4 books give immense knowledge. And there is one book where he talks about the medical industry as well and leadership, right? So the medical industry is growing, especially with diabetes, cancer, and various other illnesses. But these leadership lessons, those lessons can be put into real life, into practice. So that's something which is phenomenal, right? And sorry for interrupting you, Gary. I just wanted to bring this message before it moves away. Now you can continue with Michael Jordan. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. But to make a long story short, is that if you recognize that Michael Jordan did the fundamentals, he practiced a lot, he continued to develop, and I may never be like Michael Jordan, but I could learn. It's it's so easy to say, oh, I'll never be able to learn Spanish or French, but that is a fixed mindset. Yes, you can learn some Spanish, you can learn some French, you may not be fluent, but you can learn and grow and develop. So it's really worth exploring this growth and fixed mindset and psychological safety and being a lifelong learner and trying to learn as much as you can. Read the books, take some training courses, do whatever you can to develop your leadership and get some feedback and figure out where your strengths and areas that you can improve and focus on those.
100%. So those watching, there are some free resources available on www.garyadepaul.com. So which you can find it on the description below. So you can click on the link and you can find some valuable resources, right? Yes. So another thing is, Gary, like feedback is very important. Some organizations, they are scared to get feedback. Some people, they're scared to get feedback. Okay, is this going to tarnish my image or something? But we understand that you need feedback to develop yourself and to expand. Even organizations, they need to expand, right? So we remember Ray Kroc. He started at 52 years, where most of the people, they'll be considering retirement. He has a wonderful book called Grinding It Out. I read it. It's a fantabulous book, right? So he started at 52, and I think within 10 years, he made it a million organization, right? But he took feedback and he changed a lot of things. So, how important is feedback for organizations and people?
Yeah, you cannot develop leadership seriously unless you get feedback. It's easy to say, okay, I read about this thing on leadership and I'm going to try some of this stuff. That's okay. But to get real learning, you have to get the feedback. So here's something anyone could do. If you're in an organization and you report to someone or you work with someone, ask for feedback.
Yeah.
And here's a question, and it's uncomfortable, but it's so crucial. And I'll tell you a way of making it comfortable
Yeah.
in a minute.
Okay.
But here's an uncomfortable question to ask. Talk to someone and say, do you trust me? Can you rely on me? Do you am I contributing at the level that you want?
Yeah.
And make it safe for that person to give you feedback, whether it's a manager or a peer or someone who works for you.
True.
But here's a way of making feedback, getting some really good feedback, but it's not feedback.
Yes.
It's a technique by Marshall Goldsmith, and it's called feed forward. Instead of feedback, which looks at the past,
Yeah.
feed forward is about looking at the future.
Yes.
So here's how it works.
Okay.
I come up to you and I say, Watson, I'm trying to become better at listening.
Yeah.
And I know we're born and we learn to listen, but I know I could do a better job. What are two things that I can do to become a better listener? And then you would tell me, oh, here's two ideas. But the rule is you can't talk about my past.
Yeah.
Say we worked to each other. You can only look, you just say, this is what you can do moving forward.
Yeah.
My role is to sit and listen to you.
Yeah.
And not say anything. If I don't understand something, I may say, could you explain, give me an example, or can you elaborate on this point or whatever?
Yeah.
But that's it. And then when you're done, the two words that I need to say to you, I can only say to you these two words.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then then I offer it to you. What's something that you're wanting to develop and give it back. Now, here's the thing. If I do a workshop or if I'm doing a session and I have people trying this, I ask them, how do they feel about doing it? And they're like it. They love it. It's uplifting because it's not criticizing.
Yeah.
It's saying, here's something that you could do moving forward.
Yes.
Whether you're doing it or not.
Correct.
You don't have to know someone closely, but it's not threatening.
Yeah.
But it's a good way of learning. You focus forward versus backwards.
Correct. So
that's my advice about feedback and feed forward.
Absolutely. So I agree with you on that. Totally. So we need essential feedback for them to go forward for all those important things, right? And another thing is, Gary, like what is a message you can give to all the people watching this podcast? And before anything, I would openly say, a decade ago, when I started working, over a decade back, I used to leave office exactly on time, and I was a bit lazy. There were days when I came to office like 3 minutes, 4 minutes late, and I had a card where I had to punch it. So, and I used to miss calls sometimes, in the sense I don't answer sometimes when the calls came to my mobile, right? So one day my line manager told me, Watson, you're too slow. And she said something like, I'm not surprised if you do something, it'll always get late. So I can't remember the exact wordings, but she told me like that. I was offended because I was young and very young, and I was an old teenager. I thought to myself, what should I do? But that fueled me. That fueled me. And that fueled me. And from that moment onwards, I improved a lot. I wanted to do things the hard way. I learned, I made mistakes, I got embarrassed, but I learned. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I became I know the working structure designations are a bit different in NORAM compared to here in APAC and in Sri Lanka, but I was a clerical staff, right? I was a travel assistant. And if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken, I think I became the youngest junior executive in that company, youngest to be promoted to junior executive, right? And in my next organization where I worked, I think I became the youngest. It's a executive post, youngest supervisor, right? If I'm not mistaken, in that particular department. So
Wow.
yeah, so I'm really happy. I mean, like sometimes negativity helps us. It fuels us a lot. It makes us to come. I think it brings a different version of ourselves, right? So yes, Gary. So any final message to all our viewers and the ones listening to our podcast?
Yeah, I think what you just said was a wonderful final message, but I will add to this that again, when we wake up in the morning and we're about to go to work, no one is probably sitting there thinking, what can I do to really mess up the company today, make people look bad, and be miserable? People don't wake up that way. They may dread going to work, or they may not want to have to deal with something, but they want to contribute. They want purpose. They want to enjoy what they do and to interact with the people that they work with in a positive way. So with that in mind, when you're at work, getting that feedback is a way to, I don't know, maybe shock or just jolt you into realizing, I didn't realize I was doing this.
Yeah.
I could do a better job.
Yeah.
And once you get hooked on taking that criticism in a positive way, you can't get enough of it. What can I do better? How can I improve? How
Mhm.
am I, how can I do emails better? How can I better communicate with message? You just can't stop.
Yeah.
And the whole theme of your questioning, starting with criticism to feedback to this message,
Yeah.
I think is so crucial to being a good person,
Absolutely.
and constantly learning, and it'll eventually get to the point where you're mentoring and coaching your peers and family and
Correct.
friends and being just a better person overall.
Absolutely. So wise words, Gary, right? So once again, I'm telling you all, please check the link under the description. You can download some valuable resources from Gary's website. Also, you can get the audio version for some books and the Kindle version as well from Amazon, right?
Yep.
So thanks, Gary, for taking time and doing this podcast with us.
Thank you so much, Watson. I am honored that you would ask me to come back yet again. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.